Howdy, folks, and you're listening to the Speak Up podcast, your number one topical discussion podcast surrounding all things mental health. And I'm your host, Ashley, and in this current episode, I'll be interviewing LabyrinthMind, who is a moderator on Reddit, part of the ADHD UK subreddit. So I'll be speaking to her about her ADHD, her diagnosis, and the stigmas around ADHD and the messages that publications in the UK may be putting out there and misappropriating. So without further ado, folks, we'll jump straight into it and let's see what Lab's got to say.
I'm LabyrinthMind. I'm a moderator over on the ADHD UK subreddit. This has popped up in recent times due to how hard it's been for people to get support in the UK for ADHD. I'm also a first-year psychology student. I was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 35 after a couple of decades of being bounced around and struggling in the NHS. And I was diagnosed via Psychiatry UK and the Right to Choose pathway. And I wanted to come on the podcast today to talk about my ADHD and experiences, because in recent days, there's been quite a few harsh attacks on ADHD and people who have ADHD by the media. And I'm a little bit tired of the fake news that's going around at this point. I also just wanted to share my experiences because they're a thing, and I think it's good to talk about it.
Brilliant. That sounds really good. And just on the bit about LabyrinthMind, do you want us to refer to you as that, or is there any other preferred?
Yeah, okay. I think if we'll just go for lab or something, because otherwise it's going to turn into a bit of a tongue twister. I don't know how many times you have to say it.
Bit of a mouthful for a Sunday.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll refer to you as Lab as we go through, if we need to refer back. But so I've just got a few questions really, and some of them are quite basic to start off with, just to get us into the swing of it. But just to start briefly, can you outline to us what ADHD is from your point of view and from the sort of general consensus?
Yeah, so I'm going to take the lead on this we wrote an FAQ, me and another mod, RJ, and it took us quite a while, but I think it probably sums it up. So I'm going to sort of borrow a bit from that. But
okay.
ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, and it's a neurodevelopmental disorder that affects an individual's ability to focus, control impulses, regulate activity levels. And neurodevelopmental disorders are complex conditions that are characterized by differences in cognition, communication, behavior, sometimes motor skills, and it results from how a person's brain developed early on in life. And generally speaking, people with ADHD might have difficulty paying attention, sitting still, controlling their behavior sometimes. They tend to be easily distracted, forgetful, and impulsive. But there are also 3 different types of ADHD which impact how those symptoms manifest and how often they manifest. So you've got inattentive type, that's me. You've got hyperactive type, that's the stereotype of the 7-year-old boy misbehaving in the classroom. And then you've got combined type, where you've a bit from column A, a bit from column B. And I think the best thing to remember about ADHD is it's a disorder of attention regulation, in that people with ADHD can't easily control what they are paying attention to, because it's very easy to think, oh, it's because you can't pay attention to anything. No, you can, but you can't control it. That's sort of the difference there.
Okay, yeah, well, that's a really good sort of overview, really, of what ADHD is. So thank you for that. So in terms of symptoms to look out for and things like that, it's sort of impulsivity and inattentiveness and the inability to pay attention to things. Is that right?
It is that, but it's also quite a lot more.
Yeah.
So with ADHD, you could just list out the symptoms of ADHD, but the problem with ADHD symptoms is that it's really hard to realize what those symptoms actually look like in reality if you've spent your entire life masking and overcompensating for these issues that you have. So this is the main reason why those news articles I mentioned are going on about how it's so easy to say you have ADHD, because they're taking things that are actually quite complicated and reducing them to very simplistic things. So this is why I think we need to have more nuanced conversations. So I'll give you an example. So women tend to experience inattentive ADHD. So on paper, inattentive ADHD can look a bit like, often has trouble holding attention on tasks, and you're easily distracted, doesn't seem to listen when spoken to, has trouble organizing things, is often forgetful and distracted by things like their own thoughts, stuff like this. However, inattentive ADHD in me, who is a person who has this, actually looks more like this. So I'm a woman with a lifelong history of mental health problems that never responded to any therapy, SSRIs, or any intervention of any kind. I've had a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder or emotionally unstable personality disorder, which is like what it's called now, but it never fit me. And I've always had some sort of weird problem with my sleep, no matter what I did about it. I was never referred to a sleep clinic because people just told me to give up the caffeine I was using to function, and I couldn't. I didn't have the willpower to chase them about it, despite the sleep disorder literally destroying my life. It's called delayed sleep phase disorder. It's actually surprisingly common with ADHD. I didn't know that. So I've also got 3 learning disabilities. So the learning disabilities are a thing that co-occur very often with like any sort of, it's autism, all sorts of things. So I've got dyscalculia to a really severe level, dyslexia, that's the maths one, dyslexia, and dyspraxia, which is dyspraxia is like the coordination one. Obviously, dyslexia is where like you have trouble reading and all that sort of stuff. And I've literally got like a mental age of about 7 in maths, but I've never been assessed for any of this until I paid for an assessment myself. I was like 36. And I had all of these learning disabilities ignored for my entire education life. And this, along with being a chronic daydreamer, is the reason why I basically didn't get any GCSEs at all, despite doing really well if there was like coursework or homework. I failed college 4 times. 4 times, that's quite impressive. Wow. I think I have a record there in the making. I've also had severe depression and anxiety for like my entire adult life. And I've spent my life living in a state of permanent, unexplainable chaos. I once became, for a very long time actually, completely lost in my own imaginary world, and I thought I had something called maladaptive daydreaming, but it's ADHD. And I coped with all of this weirdness by playing computer games pretty obsessively. So I played a lot of MMOs, World of Warcraft, all that stuff, like obsessively, a lot. To this day, I still don't often know what day of the week it is. I can't ever find things. I get fired from every job I've ever had, I have and have ever had. And people generally treat me pretty poorly because they see my problems as character flaws instead of being like a part of a complex web of neurological differences. So all of that is why people don't understand what ADHD actually is when they write about it for their articles. Because that's a lot more than has trouble holding attention on tasks or activities. It's like, I failed college 4 times. That's what that means, if you see what I mean. It's like, it doesn't have to be that severe, like at all, but that's what I mean. It's when it becomes like a serious impairment, that's when it, of any kind, that's when it's more like ADHD than just, I don't know, I couldn't be bothered, which is what people seem to think it is.
Yeah, and so it's more nuanced, isn't it? There's a long pattern of being unable to do certain things, and also like, it sounds like it's been a real difficult time for you. Howdy, folks, and you've just been listening to episode 3 on the Speak Up podcast, speaking up about ADHD with LabyrinthMind. And that was just a short segment of the episode. The full episode is available on our Spotify channel.